Hello and welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Uni, and today I have with me Michelle. And I met Michelle last fall and I've had the pleasure of being able to interact with Michelle almost on a biweekly basis in a beautiful group that Michelle organizes and hosts here in San Diego for intimacy professionals and people that do a variety of types of work around intimacy, connection, sex, sexuality, and etc. So Michelle, how are you doing today? What's been good with you lately?
Well, I spent yesterday at Black's Beach with friends, and it's one of my favorite places. So that means it's a Monday that is a little bit of soreness from hiking, but a lot of love because I moved back to San Diego because I love the beaches here. I love the people here. And if I lived here and didn't go to the beach, I'd have to say, what are you doing with your life? So I'm loving that I live here. I'm loving that I live here.
That's a great feeling. And I would be a person that you would be like, what are you doing with your life? Because I rarely go to the beach.
Okay, I don't like to judge people, but this is
No,
why
no,
I
no.
live here. So
1,000%. And like I have a very like specific and like I've been told, oh, that makes sense. Like whenever I say why I don't go to the beach, I like the beach. It's just not a place that I frequent. But
no, my kids are
um,
the same way. They're like, Mom, we don't want to sit at the beach all day. And I'm like, how did I give birth to you? Like I could just sit there and do nothing and be totally happy. So
yeah, I had a chat with a friend recently, and it was like we're he was talking about planting trees on the beach, and I was like, I would be there every day if there were like big, beautiful, lush trees. Um, yeah.
I
So
get it. I get it. We each have our own spots.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, tell us a little bit about you. Feel free to introduce yourself in whatever way feels good for you today.
Well, I'll go with like a get you started where I'm at, but then maybe we could do like a retrospect of what got me here because I think it's really fascinating. Not to toot my own horn, but it's been
Yeah.
pretty magical. My name is Michelle Renee. I use she, her pronouns. Like Uni said, I'm based here in San Diego. I am a platonic surrogate partner and intimacy guide, and you might say platonic intimacy guide. How do those things generally don't go together? That's part of my fun story. Um, I worked in sexuality, doing erotic contact work with clients for about 4 years before I decided, hey, I figured out some stuff about myself. I actually am asexual, which starts to make me understand why sex is a lot of work. Like I like sex, I enjoy sex once I'm in it, but I don't think about it a whole lot. And the question that came up was, do you experience sexual attraction when you look at a person? And I thought, actually, I don't. When I look at someone, I'm never thinking, boy, I want to fuck you. I'm thinking, oh, I want closeness with you. Could we cuddle and talk and have emotional intimacy? And then I'm probably going to get to the point where my body is turned on and I might want sex, right? But it's not a clear path for me. And so with that question, I started to go, shit, I think I'm asexual.
Mm-hmm.
And people go, well, then they think it means I don't want sex. And it's like, no, no, no. I really love sex and I have a great sex life. But the way I get there is maybe a little bit different than a lot of people. And so I started to talk about it. And funny, you say, I connect a lot of community together. That's intimacy professionals, mental health professionals, a lot of sex therapists. And when I started to say, hey, I'm going to talk to a asexuality expert about what I think is going on with me, they're like, but Michelle, you can't be asexual. Like you're the sex geek that is all over talking about sex and helping her clients learn about sex. And I'm like, even you don't get it. Right. So it was at first there was this frustration where I'm like, maybe I don't want to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it settled in with me for a little while. And I was like, no, I think it's important that I talk about it because I have the platform to talk about it. And the more I talk about it with my friends, I hear, gosh, I kind of think maybe I'm there too. Like people never actually sat down and thought about when I look at a person, what am I attracted to? because
Mm.
there's so many things to be attracted to. And we're never probably just attracted to one thing, right? But my list of, I'm really attracted to people's brains, and I'm really attracted to their aesthetics, and I'm really attracted, like, there's so many things. And the one thing that doesn't come up is, man, I want to bang you. Like
Mm.
it just doesn't, it does not cross my mind. So it's been kind of fun to take that on as an educational platform, but also it had to affect my work because I was
Mm.
like, maybe I don't want to do the sex work part of my work anymore. What
Yeah.
does that
Well,
do for my practice?
yeah. Well, before we dive, like, I'm so curious. I have so many questions and like
Mhm.
thoughts on the asexuality pieces that you already touched in and kind of brought to the surface. Um, just to kind of paint a picture for people of like where you have been slash what you do. Like, what is a surrogate partner?
Yeah.
You mentioned platonic intimacy, and you mentioned erotic, right? So you mentioned these words that I know for me, whenever I'm in conversation with people, whenever I'm connecting with new people and dating, or I'm teaching a class or something, and I'm saying these words, intimacy, erotic, sensual are all code for sex for a lot of people. And
Mhm.
for me, they all hold different meanings, right?
Mhm.
So intimacy is intimacy, which is a spectrum. Erotic and sensual and sexual are all different things, even though they sit side by side. And so I'd
Yeah.
love to hear more about like those pieces for you
Yeah.
because I didn't know what surrogacy was. I still kind of don't.
Yeah. Well, let's talk
And I
about
hear a
it.
lot of people are like, what is that?
Yeah. Well, it's a modality that is rare. Like there's not a lot of us in the world. Um, Traditionally, surrogate partner therapy started with Masters and Johnson back in the 60s and 70s. They were working out of St. Louis and they would bring in married couples to help with the penis issues, right? Heaven forbid we have to make sure all the penises work just right, right? So couples were coming in and spending like a week there, and they would teach sensate focus exercises, which is like mindfulness with touch. Is kind of the simplest way I would break it down is like touching with real like curiosity and who is the touch for and that kind of question.
And by
So
touch, do you mean like sexual touch or all forms
yeah,
of
it
touch?
would start as just literally touching hands, like a
Okay.
hand caress, taking your partner's hand and just being really soft and sensual with it and seeing how you enjoy that and like getting away from everything having to be like genital focused. And
Mm-hmm.
so genital contact was off the radar for the first bit of that work, and then they would add genital touch. But we're learning to touch other parts of the body in a real sensual way so that it kind of takes if you're having like premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction, you kind of learned how to be in your body in a much more
Mm-hmm.
calm space. So those some of those difficulties lessened. But they also had single men coming in wanting help, but they didn't have a partner. So they
Mm-hmm.
brought in other women to be their partner, probably sex workers, and called them surrogate partners or sex surrogates was what was really commonly called then. And it made sense to call them sex surrogates. That was really the point of what they were getting to, was to do the sex thing, right? Fast forward, I say we're in like a surrogate partner renaissance where the field is being with an influx of new people, and it's kind of evolved a lot to where it's more of a relationship surrogacy, and sex can be part of the therapeutic process. So it's a person that is in talk therapy, really established there. They've tried lots of things. They're kind of stuck. And the therapist will be like, hey, what if we tried adding a surrogate partner? And then someone like myself would come in. I build a relationship with their client. I'm talking to the therapist. All three of us are in conversation. And it's trying to figure out what is happening with the client that is inhibiting them from having either emotional or physical intimacy. And when I say intimacy in that sense, usually it's sexual intimacy. But as I've done the work for a few years, there's a lot there that doesn't have to be connected to sex. It's a lot of teaching people how to feel safe in their bodies. So, example, I had a client that came to me that was having erectile issues after divorce. Before the divorce, had found out, like, had some old memories come up around child sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any erectile issues while he was married, gets divorced, goes out into the dating world, and is like, hey, I'm having issues. And I'm like, of course you are. You had this stable relationship when you found out about these memories, and it didn't affect your sexual relationship. But now you're out, all new people. You don't know what safety feels like, right? And so our work was really about helping him learn how to, one, be able to identify what he wanted
Mm-hmm.
because of that early assault history that was trained out of him. And he didn't know what he didn't know. We start with an exercise that's like, okay, I want you to feel into your body when you're a yes or you're a no. And he was just completely like, I don't know. Like there's nothing there that most people inherently have. So we had to retrain that. And then he had to learn how to trust himself to know when he felt safe and when he didn't. And that was it. That's all our work was. We never got naked. We never had any kind of erotic contact. And when we talk about erotic, for me, is that bringing in of sexual energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the difference for me between like platonic and erotic is I'm showing up as like Michelle, your friend in platonic space. I can be, I joke that I'm kind of like part sorority sister when I work with a lot of women. I'm part like older sorority sister. I come with lot of mom energy. I'm just kind of that sturdy base for the people
Mm-hmm.
that come work with me. If I'm working with somebody that's male, then maybe um I don't maybe the mom energy comes in a little bit more of like I'm that safe place. Maybe they had a difficult relationship with their mom. It's not like the kinky mommy thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just being that nurturing space for the client to do the work that needs to be done up to the point of I really don't have any desire to get into that sexual energy space with my clients. I can take them to a certain point and then I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of out.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense and resonates with me because that's how I show up in my work. And there's this like, there are these moments where people come in with this like expectation or this assumption that like this is going to be a sexual space, at the very least, an erotic space. And playing with like the erotic energy for the sake of understanding like sensuality, understanding sexuality, understanding like what is like available for us, like is the edge that I'm able to go to, but I never really cross into that like sexual space. It's not where my work is designed to go.
Yeah.
But that's super fascinating. I think that a lot of people have those like blockages or those challenges, but it is a space that like is infrequently talked about. There's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of fear and a lot of like repression around like our imperfections in our performance and in our sexuality.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, like the story that you shared with us about you, like one of your clients and like finding that safe space. But I think even more so than finding the safe space, like empowering this person to create a safe
Mm-hmm.
space within themselves and a safe space that they can share with someone else
Mm-hmm.
is transformative.
Yeah. Sometimes they've never felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had clients where I've said, what would make you feel safe? And they just look at me like I've asked them the most impossible question. Right. And so part of, I think my work is helping them have a model to recognize what these things feel like in their body so that it feels familiar to them when they're out in the wild.
Yeah.
Right. And even so I started in professional cuddling. So that's where my love of platonic kind of snuck up on me because when I got divorced in 2014, I was working on my own sexuality. I wanted to orgasm better.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could orgasm, but it was a struggle. I never masturbated. I found this amazing older woman named Dotson when
Mm-hmm.
she was still alive. Thank God I got time with her. And she really empowered me out of that divorce to be sexually liberated. I was in control of my own orgasm. I was masturbating regularly. I knew what I liked. I knew how to talk about it. Like, she changed my life. And so when I went to her workshop, she did these masturbation workshops in her Manhattan apartment. So the fall of 2014, I'm naked for 2 days in this woman's apartment with about a dozen women. And I'd already done a lot of the body image work, because a lot of it is like looking at your vulva in a mirror and learning her masturbation technique. And a lot of it is the sisterhood of the women that you're in that space with. And I was sitting there thinking, God, I want to do this work. I want to have a hands-on part of changing someone's life, right? But I was living in West Michigan at the time. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to go home and get a bunch of women to get naked with me on a regular basis and masturbate together. Not going to happen. Not going to, that money to become that facilitator was not going to be well spent. So I did not go down that route. But I knew this was me coming out of divorce as a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, no real education. I had a little bit of accounting background. I had always helped my then husband with our small business. I was a homeschooling mom. I had a kid with a chronic illness that I was like basically an artificial pancreas for. What was I going to do now that I was single, needing to support myself? Thankfully, I had some savings, so I didn't have to rush out and pick the first shitty job that showed up in my lap. I got to say, where's my yes and where's my no, and just kind of follow these invitations that landed on my doorstep. And so I went to Sex Geek Summer Camp, which this is the last year for it. If anybody's listening, it's probably too late. Sex Geek Summer Camp is a camp for sex educators to learn how to have a business, and how do you do your YouTube channel, and how do you, like, it's just a lot of business development during the day, and then fun, cool parties at night, right? Just as you would expect for summer camp. You're literally out camping with a bunch of sex geeks. And I thought, I'll go there and figure out, what kind of sex educator do I want to become? I will be like, is it you? Do I want to be like you? Do I want to be like you? Do I want to be like you? Came home with no idea what I wanted to do. But I had a really cool group of people that I was connected to at that point. And we were in a discussion about professional cuddling. It was kind of breaking into the space. And I was like, I'm a mom. I could totally cuddle. This will be a stopover for eventually doing hands-on sex education. And Cuddlist.com had just come on the market. They were doing free trainings at the time. You had to go to Chicago or New York to get trained. And I was in West Michigan, so it was like 2-hour drive. December 2015, walkout certified professional cuddler at the end of the night, right? It's completely different now. But I was like, I'll start doing this. And I became a cuddle party facilitator. I really dove into this platonic touch world, and I healed my past relationship, like the unhealthiness of it. I was very codependent. I didn't understand what boundaries were. I didn't know how to ask for what I wanted or even identify what I wanted. And I was practicing teaching clients this every day as a professional cuddler, and practicing it for myself every day. It was like, get paid to heal yourself kind of situation. It was the best thing I could have been doing. And what I realized was that I was doing sex education. I was teaching people how to communicate, right? How to practice good consent, how to, again, identify what you want and ask for it. You can do these things. If you've done anything around the Wheel of Consent with Betty Martin, she will talk about, we have to learn these skills outside of the bedroom, because when we get into sexual spaces, our brains get all worked up on the chemicals, the hormones, and we just go back to what we know. So we have to learn it in platonic space. So when the asexuality came up, I started practicing surrogate partner therapy. I guess I started training in 2018, but I really started practicing in 2020. I moved across the country to Baltimore. There was a great need for another female surrogate there. So I got off and running and had a great practice there. And I got to kind of pull my cuddle work into my surrogate partner work, which was not something that was happening a lot in that world. So my mentor at the time was like, yeah, I don't know about you, Michelle. You're wanting to cuddle with people awfully fast. We're used to building up with a client before we introduce touch. And I'm like, why? It feels like a wasted time to like build connection. Like I've seen it for years how people build trust faster when touch is involved. And I'm like, as long as there's not some kind of trauma around touch and they're a real yes to adding mutual touch, why are we waiting? It
That's
just seems
so,
silly.
yeah, that's so interesting because like I come from the kink space, so my like intimacy and sex work, like sexual connection, any of that is like connected to kink,
Mhm.
more so than kind of the avenue that you're coming from. And that's something that has come up a lot for me in the work is I think that it's identifying like what is available for a person and the pieces that you mentioned, like um I'm doing sex education. Sex education starts outside of the bedroom. It starts with learning how to have a conversation, with understanding yourself, with being able to practice and communicate consent. And these are all things that I talk about on a weekly basis, one on one or in my group classes. And I like, I joke a lot, and it's factual that like kinksters are nerds. Like, kinksters love conversation. So you may like the amount of conversation that I've had in comparison to the amount of like kinky experiences is not equal. I've had copious amounts of conversations, and like the enactment, the like hard skills have become like have not been the same amount as the soft skills. Whenever I teach, that is something that comes up a lot, is like we spend a lot of time talking about how to talk, talking about how to set up a scene, talking about how to figure out a person, so that whenever the touch does start to happen, it is coming from a place of like a true yes. It's coming from a place of like really understanding like what's happening in your body, and like being able to like really create a safe container within yourself so that you can show up and feel safer in the spaces that you're in, or understand and identify that you're not feeling safe and create a shift idealistically. Because
Yeah.
to the point that you brought up about sex, like whenever we enter into this sex space, our like chemistry changes, like our brain chemicals change. We talk about that a lot in kink, but it's not really talked about a lot in the sex space. And I think that that comes from like the cultural way that we navigate sex, like we disconnect and disassociate to create connection. We
Yeah.
drink, we do drugs, we go out and party, we do these like social norms to create this like really intimate space that's like really about being in our bodies. And so I loved like the bits and pieces that you kind of like brought to surface, because I think that it's just not identified a lot. And so I had an experience recently that took me back to being like 21-year-old self, where I had a sexual connection with a new person, and I had this like it was so weird, and it wasn't weird because it was like a weird experience, but me being me and being able to like really assess and like introspect, I was like, what happened here? And it was like me going back to my 21-year-old self of just like navigating through something super unintentionally, not communicating, fawning, not being able to like really take the time to ground into my body. So like the connection that I'm having with this person was super ungrounded. It was super disconnected. And I came out of the experience feeling like I was in like a tornado. I was like, what was and there was nothing that was like wrong that had happened in the situation. It was just me having the awareness of like the difference between feeling really present and really embodied and really safe, and then feeling like I just kind of like did something really unintentional.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of like having this new experience, like going through something similar, like a familiar thing, but in a new way. But
Mm-hmm.
you're able to look at it in retrospect and pick out those points that were like, I don't know how to word it. I had something similar where I'm like, oh, I don't do well as a bottom, is what I have come to realize. There's some stuff for me to work on there because of my history, not being in charge, I tend to be a top. Um, I start to fawn and freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so devastatingly cool to be in that experience and be able to call it, name it, right? Like I was the other night, my partner was giving me a massage, but you knew it was supposed to go somewhere else, right? And I found myself, because the way that my sexuality works, I kind of know what my recipe is. And let's talk about two different kinds of desire, responsive desire and spontaneous desire. And if anybody hasn't read Come As You Are, go read it. I am very much spontaneous desire is like getting struck by lightning. I'm horny. I'm ready to fuck, right? I am totally a responsive desire person. I have to be aroused before desire shows up, which means I have to show up in a space that has potential, even though I'm not really there yet. And so I have to have that safety of knowing, A, that I'm really good with my no, and that my partner is good hearing a no, right? Because
Mm.
I can do a lot of internal coercion to push myself into something that I'm not ready for. So I'm laying there face down on my bed. He's rubbing me. And I kept thinking, okay, at some point desire will show up, right? But what I'm noticing is that because I'm not in charge, I'm getting farther from desire. I'm going into shutdown.
Mm.
And I stopped everything and I said, I'm noticing this feels really familiar to me. It feels very much like my old relationship when I was married, and there was so much sexual coercion where I would just really just check out and let him have the sex with me, like to me, not with me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like a human masturbation sleeve, you know?
Yeah.
And so thank God my partner is like, what do you need from me right now? And I said, I just want to curl into a ball and cry for a little bit and like let myself feel all the grief from
Mm.
that previous version of myself, right? And in the end, we had great conversation and ended up having sex, right? But like it was, I got to be in my empowered yes, rather than just like letting something happen to me because I was able to like call a timeout. I'm not moving in the direction that I know I need to move in. And it's because I'm in like bottom space.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think like that's so relatable, and it's relatable for me personally, but I think that that is something that I feel like a lot of people can have some sort of relatability to,
Mhm.
because we're taught that sex is supposed to be like this fast, like reactive, like you see someone you're turned on, you like move into this like primal energy and you're just like go, and 3 seconds in you're dripping wet and you're fucking, and it's like that's not.
It
Maybe
can
I've had sex
happen.
like that a few times, but like most of the time that's not happening for me. And I don't think that like most many women that I speak with, that's not what's happening with them and in their bodies. And even the men that I speak, like it's not even a gender thing. It's just not the reality of how it actually happens. And so I think that there's this like disconnect that we all have been brainwashed by media that this is what sex looks like, because yeah, we have to portray a sexual scene in 3 seconds, not over 3 hours, right? And so we
Yeah.
get this like perception that this is what sex is. Porn also paints that same picture where people walk into a room and they're just like ready to go and they're going. And in reality, there's so many things that comes up in our sex. There, you mentioned crying, you mentioned the need to really come into yourself and like reclaim your own space before you felt a desire to like open up again towards your partner. And whenever we're having casual sex can be like liberating, it can be fun, it can be exciting and exhilarating, but it can also be really like intense, and it can be really like disconnecting, at least for me, because there isn't that spaciousness for whatever the reality is to exist, right? Like if I'm having sex with a stranger, and this is something that I've been like really reflecting on because I've spent the last year working in local sex clubs teaching. exploring my exhibitionism, which I love, um, but also taking a step back and being like, what is for me and like what is mine and what is true? Like I had this experience, did I really enjoy it or did I enjoy the thought of it? Right.
Mhm.
And did I like really like what parts did I really enjoy and what parts were more the like fantasy of the experience that was the enjoyment for me? And you had brought up earlier about like intellect and like being attracted to all these other things. And I discovered the vocabulary that gives me like clarity and gives me affirmation on some of my like existence. Like I'm very demisexual, I'm very sapiosexual, I'm very like I need intellect and conversation and energy and presence to be turned on. I can look at someone and be like, that person is physically attractive. I get why people are attracted to them. And if there's no connectivity beyond just like the physical attractiveness, like my chemistry doesn't get turned on. And so it is harder for me to be in these like exhibition spaces where you're just like, yo, what's up? Because I'm like, yeah, you are attractive and there's nothing more for me. And even going into the place of like, okay, well, what if I put myself into physical connectivity, right? Like, what if we kiss? What if we touch? And sometimes it is a responsive, but a lot of times it is, I still need more because of where I'm at in my journey, too.
Yeah. And here's the thing I had to learn is that that doesn't make you broken.
No.
And for a long time,
And thank you
I
for
was,
saying that.
yeah, no, but for a long time, I was told by my first husband because I wasn't spontaneously ready to have sex, that I didn't have the same drive that he had, that
Mhm.
I was broken. There's something wrong with me. I heard that for 2 decades of relationship. So when I read Come As You Are from Emily Nagoski, where she talks about this, I cried my eyes out, right? Because it was like such a relief that there's nothing wrong with me. This is the thing. We're not a monolith. Like we each need to figure out how we work because how we work is perfect, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's different. And so to go back to like the platonic side, I'll be in sometimes I'm in cuddle sessions. I still do professional cuddling. Most of my work looks like professional cuddling. I kind of joke that if you come to my website, I don't talk about it so much other than I have a history in it. Because some people are really icked out by the word, like they have a feeling about it. Um, so if you come to my website, you're looking at it as a, platonic intimacy guide or human connection coach. If you come through Cuddlist, you're looking at professional cuddling. It's all the same session. Doesn't matter, right? So I had a client come to me recently for sex coaching, and I said, hey, so just in case you thought you're going to have sex with me, I'm on a sex work cleanse this year, and so I'm not doing any sex work, but I'd be happy to cuddle with you. I said, can I ask you what you searched when you found me? He says, sex coach. I said, oh, great. Well, guess what? I am so delighted to talk to you about sex while we cuddle. I can coach you on all sorts of things, but I just don't want to have sex with you. Like, that's not, I will take all the questions. So we're cuddled up and he's delightful to spend time with, and we have this lovely chemistry together, and we feel really safe together. And I said to him, do you see right now how easily it would be to turn this into a sexual experience? Like we've got the building blocks in place, right? We have safety, we have proximity. Now we have touch involved. All it takes is a change of intention and taking our clothes off, right? It would be so easy to transition it. And he's like, oh yeah. So it is like I'm still sex coaching.
Mm.
I'm teaching how to get the foundation, like building a house. If you've got a good, strong foundation, so many things can happen on top of that foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're literally like hands-on guiding people into an experience. You're
Yeah.
creating an experience that they can take outside of the room
Yeah.
and replicate with someone that they have an attraction to.
Yeah.
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 And this is something that's so stigmatized, right? Like we're like there's so many people that look down on this type of work or have like shame or fear around it, which is, I think, just a testament to how we feel about intimacy as like a society.
Mhm. Yeah. Or love. Like the big question I get is, well,
Mm.
what if clients fall in love with you? And I'm like, isn't that great if they do? Like, most of the time I'm working with their therapist, so they have someone to talk about their feelings. And I love everybody that comes through my door. So we usually have a conversation of what does love mean,
Mm.
right? If I tell you I love you, which I think the shit is free, spread it around. People need it. And sometimes I've said I love you to a client and they've never heard anybody say that to them before, right? So then we get to talk about this. Sometimes, a lot of times people come into my office because they have a lack of experience with relationships. And they've got stuck in a point in their life. So there's a developmental delay around it. There's a lack of experience. So their idea of love is very different than my idea of love. And they think love is like the limerence, the unrequited love is something they've experienced a lot of. So their idea is like, I'm obsessed with you, right? I can't stop thinking about you. To them,
Mm.
that means love. And I'm like, oh, well, that's not how I view love, right? We get to talk about, for me, love is about caring. And I think it's a choice. I choose to love everyone that walks in my office. I see them in a place of like unconditional positive regard. I want to know who you are, not who you think I want to know who you are. Like I want to know the real you. And I want to love that person. I want you to be able to be yourself and know what it feels like to be seen for exactly who you are and cared for. That's a shift for them because they're just like, what? Like, it's not the butterfly feeling. It's not like I said, the obsessive thoughts and things like that. And I'm like, no, no. So then we get to practice like a mature love where we get to pass that feeling back and forth. But I'm holding this container and boundaries. I'm not going to date you. I'm not going to sleep with you. I get to show up more myself because that fence is really clear on what I'm a yes to and what I'm a no to. So I don't know if you've ever heard the playground. There's like a playground study where they put a teacher on the playground with her classroom of kids, and without a fence around the playground, the kids stayed real close to her. But when you put them in a playground that had a fence, the kids all spread out
Mm.
because they knew where their limits were,
Mhm.
right? And so for me, knowing what my limits are coming into a space with clients means I get to love them a heck of a lot more than if I thought I might have to have sex with them. Like I say that with a
Mm.
cringe on my face if you're watching this video, because anybody who's done sex work will resonate with this. Is like you're showing up to do a performance, right? It's not
Mhm.
the same as like an organic connection where you're getting to like kind of go with the flow and see where your yes and your no is. There's an expectation when people come into sex work, right? And I'm there to like meet their expectations. I can't show up as fully myself because I have to kind of keep this performative aspect to myself. But working in Platonic, I get to show up 100% me. People do not meet me as a persona of if you met me in a private place where I was just, sitting chilling with friends, I'm exactly the same person. And so I think there's something special to that people are either afraid of or they're craving.
Yeah. There's something so special to that. And I love that you named like sex work as performative. Um, because that's how I feel about kink, like public kink, right?
Mhm.
I am an artist. I'm a performer. I love performing, and part of what I love about public kink is the performativeness of it. And that's something that has come up for me where people are like, "Ooh, I want to play with you. I want to," and I have so many boundaries within that because it's like, oh, like I can do a performance with you, like I can provide this to this level, but you want to be in another part of my energy that I'm not willing to go to. And it's been a journey, like really understanding because I think what isn't said in this work, we get the performance, so we create these expectations and we create these stories around the performance. And so people are like, oh, you're such a sexual person. You're so sensual. You have all of these things that I want to experience. And the reality is, I don't want to experience that with everyone.
Yep.
And that felt so, I had so many feelings around that come up whenever I first like started to identify that with myself, because I was like, oh, like if I'm kink, if I'm going to be a kink educator, if I'm going to be a sex educator, I have to be something that I'm not.
Yeah. There's
Where do
kind
I
of
take
an
up space?
interesting, yeah. When I first got in the sex ed world, is a very incestuous world. I feel like everybody in the sex ed world is fucking everybody in the sex ed world, right?
That's
There's
what
that
they, that's what
expectation
we
too.
want to think.
Yeah. And and I
And
think
it's
some
partially
of them
true.
are, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
totally like slut yourself out. I was a very proud slut for a really long time. And then I've just changed, right? And I think that it's okay to be any place on that spectrum as
Mm-hmm.
long as it's true to you. But the consumers of our products, our services, I just don't think they understand that this is our job.
Yeah. But I think that like this piece that we're talking about right now is so important, right? Because we are putting out a product for people to consume. And what you're talking about is the evolution of self through your
Hmm.
own consumption. So I'm out, I'm experiencing, I'm exploring, I'm getting fuck yeses, I'm doing all the wild, crazy things my fantasies and desires ever brought up for me, and checking the boxes. And then at some point, like, I'm bored or I'm over it, or I'm like, I'm just not interested in the same thing, or I've created a different connectivity and a different depth. And the change is what is beautiful about life. Like the
Yeah,
evolution is what's beautiful because we get to actually create an honest answer, not this like assumed answer or not this answer that was forced on us, you know, and we can
yeah,
see it really easily in the space of monogamy or non-monogamy, or like going from like purity culture into like more hedonistic culture, but like these like more nuanced spaces where it's just like, oh, like I used to really be into this thing and now I'm not so much anymore.
mhm,
And I think like you mentioned earlier, you know, like a newly discovered asexuality, and I'd love to kind of like talk about that more because I know some things about asexuality, but not enough. And my understanding of asexuality is one, like the cliche statement, it is a spectrum, but what does that even mean, right?
yeah,
And I think that that is such a beautiful example of how we can evolve. So yeah, tell us more
yeah.
about that
Well,
space.
interesting is that I first came into asexuality with my first partner post-divorce. He was my first young partner. I was like 39 at the time. He was 24, and I met him in the kink world, and he was my daddy, and which is really interesting to be almost 40 and have a 24-year-old daddy. And like I was like I thought I wanted to be so submissive to him. Like I was in a very different place in life. And and the sex was great. And then it wasn't. Like literally within 6 weeks, we were at like a kink conference and staying in this hotel and all this fun stuff happening around us. And we didn't have sex once. And I was like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with our relationship? And he was like, I just want to like take you in the shower and wash your hair. Like it was just like he wanted to nurture and take care of me, but it wasn't a sexual thing. And I was like, is he gay? I was going through all of these things,
Mm,
right? And eventually we broke up because I was like, why are we together if we're not fucking? Like, A, I don't want to make you fuck because I've been on the other side of coercion.
mm-hmm,
That is not, and I found myself like trying to manipulate and do everything I could to get him like, like I almost felt like the sadist in him was holding the sex back from me. So I was like, if I be a really good girl and I walk on eggshells and all these things, he'll give me the sex, right? And so we broke up briefly and I missed him terribly. But while we were apart, I kept searching because I'm the sex geek. What's going on with this relationship? And I found a term that is much more common now that wasn't common back then called phrasexual, which is the opposite of demisexual, which you mentioned earlier, which is needing to have this emotional connection before attraction shows up. For my partner, he had the sexual attraction until the connection showed up.
Oh,
And
what
then
was the word?
phrasexual, F-R-A-Y, fray. Yeah.
Asexual. Okay.
So, to him, it was like he moved past sexual attraction
Mm.
and he didn't understand it. He just knew this had happened before. And I find this word and I'm like, hey, we broke our no contact because I was dying to see him. And he was being so good about holding the boundary. But I reached out to him and said, if you want to talk, like, let's talk. And so we talked and I said, hey, I found this word that might resonate with you. And it was almost like a gift and a curse at the same time because he didn't know this thing. He knew there was a pattern, but he didn't really know what it was and never knew if it was going to change with the next person. But it was like, no, it's probably clearly a thing. And so we got back together. We took sex off the table. We still had our kink relationship for a while. And that was really the way that we connected. But then I started playing with my current partner and found my top side, decided I didn't want to bottom anywhere, blah, blah, blah. But that was my first foray into the asexual world. So fast forward these years. And what I know about asexuality, I'm probably not the expert to talk about it as far as like, I know my experience, is that yes, there's lots of ways we can enter the asexual spectrum. It's like something to do when things around sexual attraction are not quite the typical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So clearly he has sexual attraction. It just shows up in this very specific way. You know, demisexual is part of the asexual spectrum. You have sexual attraction that just shows up in a specific way. It can be that you rarely have sexual attraction. I've had sexual attraction, I think one time, and I say that in retrospect, looking back. I was at a party, kink party, 2015. I walk in the door. There is this bald man, and I love bald men, naked with his dick on a leash. And I was like, I'm going home with him tonight. And I was no stranger to one night stands, but I never felt whatever this thing was. It scared the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And a girlfriend came up to me and said, hey, would you like to go get out of here and go shoot pool? And I was like, yes, because it scared me, this feeling of wanting to go home with him. And if I take it and break it all apart many years later, looking back at it, I think a lot of those one night stands were curiosity. I was newly divorced, needing to like test out the buffet and figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. And go on a dating app and the world is your oyster if you want to try out the buffet. There's a million different options. And also I think I learned a term recently, compulsory sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
So having sex because we're supposed to have sex.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think a lot of it was that too, in that I've done a lot of that. It's what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because desire shows up for me completely separate from like attraction, I can do that. I don't think it was harmful, but it's just interesting to look back at that through that lens and know that I wasn't looking at someone and going, I want to sleep with you. I just never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Right. So now that I think about it, I literally will just sit there and look at somebody and I go, I'm attracted to that person. What is it that I'm actually attracted to and what do I want? Because if I quit assuming that I want to have sex with them, it's something else completely that shows up. And it's just interesting. It hasn't really changed who I am. I just have different information, different lens to look at life through, just like, you know, considering that I think I'm probably autistic and I think I probably have ADHD. When you start to consider situations through those lenses, you start to go, oh, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have aphantasia. We haven't talked about that yet. A couple years ago, I'm at a kinky board game weekend. A friend was throwing together. It was like 10 of us in this cabin in West Virginia. Oops. And my husband comes running in and he goes, oh my God, I just learned about this thing. I got to tell you about it. I know you're such a geek about this stuff. You'll love this. And I was like, all right. And he goes, if I say the word red truck, what do you see? And I'm like, I see the words red truck. And he's like, no way. You're the thing I was going to tell you about. You have aphantasia. You don't see things in pictures.
Mm.
And I'm like, huh, yeah, I guess you're right. I don't. Like when it's a uh, on the moment, like on the spot question, I see words. If I try really hard, I can pull up a fuzzy image,
Mhm.
right? But it's not my natural state to go to that place. It's really hard for me. And then I'm like, oh, well, this starts to make other things in my life make sense. This is why
Yeah.
rope is really hard for me to do shibari as a
Mhm.
top. I can't capture the image of these knots. So if I'm not doing it every day to keep that really fresh, ask me how to do a single column tie right now. And I'm like, I mean, I kind of can get there, but I'm probably not going to just whip it out like that. And going back to like, we were at the rock climbing gym one time and I don't go very often. And I was like, hey, Paul, can you just like tie this knot for me real quick to get started? Because I hadn't been there in forever and figure eight, whatever. And he goes, oh, come on. There's only like two ways you could possibly tie this. And I'm like, no, seriously, I don't even know where to start because I can't pull up the image to know
Mm.
what the knot looks like. And I got really irate. I was like, fuck you, dude. Quit being an asshole. I didn't ask you to teach me. I asked you to do it for me. And now looking back at it, we're like, oh, that makes total sense. Because he was like, why
Yeah.
are you getting so mad?
Oh,
Right. But he didn't understand what my brain was doing. And I didn't understand what his brain was doing because I only know my experience.
yeah.
Right.
That's so interesting and what a like discovery to come across. Like I'm on the complete opposite spectrum. Like I have a whole world happening inside my mind at all times. Like
Yeah.
I am completely content being alone, like 80% of the time because I'm just here like fantasizing
Yeah. And I have no
about anything and
fantasy.
everything.
Yeah. So think about how that ties into like my sexuality. People, first
Mhm.
question was, how do you masturbate? And I'm like, by sensation. And honestly, I don't masturbate that much anymore. My preference is to have partnered sex because I actually get to be in it with someone at the time.
Mhm.
Where to masturbate, I don't go to fantasy. So it's just really like, yeah, I mean, it feels good. I use it to fall asleep or reduce anxiety or whatever, like to prove I still can, whatever, right? Like, but it's not like my friend Sarah used to talk about like making love to herself for hours. And I'm like, really? Like, I just, it doesn't, if I turn on porn, I can do that, right? I can get
Mhm.
really into porn because it's creating the fantasy for me, but I
Mhm.
don't do it on my own. And it's interesting where that comes into my world.
Yeah. Well, with this newly discovered asexuality, because I think like whenever people hear asexual, there's an automatic like the same with intimacy, right? We automatically assume like intimacy means sex. We automatically assume asexuality means non-sexual. What what are you exploring within your sexuality right now? Like, what does sex look like for you? If you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it always did. I mean, it's always kind of ebb and flowing. A little bit is messed up recently because I'm on a medication that I really think is dampening all of my pleasure centers.
Mhm.
So it's really not on my mind, but also food isn't on my mind. And we have to weigh the, like, I don't, I'm on a medication that really reduces what we call food noise. I
Mm.
happen to be a person that without that medication, I'm thinking about food all the time. And it feels awful. It takes over all your thoughts, right? And to have that quiet is such a relief. And I didn't know it until I felt it.
Mm.
And so I also think it took away like a lot of I don't drink alcohol. Um, Food just isn't exciting to me, which is kind of sad. I mean, I used to be someone who could dance with food. You know what I mean? Like I got really excited to think about food. Um, and I think it's doing that with sex. So put that aside. That's a whole separate kind of side
Mhm.
effect that I have to really remind myself that I like sex. So that's kind of a big part of my world these days is remember, Michelle, you do like this. You just have to follow the recipe, right? So I what I'm realizing, I'm at my best when I'm in like a toppy headspace, right? So a little femdommy, not so much an impact player, but I love sensation play. My biggest turn on is hearing my partner be turned on, right? Which in Wheel of Consent world would be like indirect pleasure, but we'll take it because that's what works for my recipe is that I'm going to borrow a little bit of his pleasure so that it turns me on so that my desire shows up, right? I'm all about figuring out my owner's manual. What do I need? What works for me? And so, yeah, just like being kind of the boss in bed and playing with power and teasing and like a little tease and denial is always fun. I love to have someone beg. Those are the things that turn me on. And sex is good. Sex is still good, even with all the things that kind of feel like they become little extra hurdles. What I always ask the question, do you want sex?
Mm.
Right? I think that's really important. It's okay to not want sex. I want to want sex. And so I know what it takes to get me to that place. And I'm thankful that I know what I need to do. And it works 99% of the time.
That's such a like poignant question, right? Do you want to want sex? I think you don't have to be asexual for that to I think
No.
that's like I feel like this is like first, second, third date, depending on what your movement into physical connection is. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's an important question because it really creates that space for like co-creating a formula if you're in
Yeah.
partnered sex or even co-creating a formula for yourself.
Yeah. For so long, I used sex as a validation tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another big thing that's shifted over the last many years. I found my self-worth on MDMA. Like I was at a really fun, kinky, psychedelic house party back in like 2019. And somebody said, who wants to try Molly? And I was like, I want to try Molly. I was a late bloomer. I didn't do a lot of drugs ever. I didn't do any drugs until after I was divorced. And in that space, my takeaway was like, wow, I'm really okay by myself. Like I felt so grounded in myself because I was at this party, but I wasn't really with anybody. I was like curled up in a blanket naked for the whole party by myself, just asking myself, what do you want right now? What do you want right now? And doing those things for myself. And that integrated, and I've never been the same person since. But I think it also some of my sex drive was tied to like proving myself and
Mm-hmm.
testing my relationship and making sure I'm still, attractive and desirable and these things. And once those needs went away, it kind of lowered my need for sex. Now I have sex for different reasons.
Yeah. Like what was that shift? I guess you said this is what I was doing before. Like what are some of your reasons now?
Now it's just because I enjoy it. I'm not worried about what the state of my relationship is. We have a lovely sex life. And that's one of the things that's been interesting for my partner as I've discovered my asexuality is when I say I'm asexual, he feels a need to qualify that. And we talked about this the other day. I said, I noticed that when I say I'm asexual, you pipe in with, but she still likes sex.
Mm.
I said, can we talk about that? Because I get a little bit of a feeling about that like you are trying to prove to people something that like I'm not leaving you destitute in a sexless relationship because we also happen to be pretty monogamous. I won't say we're 100% monogamous, but for most people, they look at us and we're very much a monogamous couple. I say we're socially monogamous if we're traveling, whatever. But like he feels this need to make sure everyone knows that he's not being cut out of sex.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. And he thinks that I should, like the educator in me would want people to know that you can be asexual and still like sex. And so we're kind of finding this middle ground of like, how do I talk about it in a way that feels um good to him and to me, right? Because
Yeah.
he doesn't, I don't know, there's something about, and I understand it, there's something about wanting people to know that you still have a great sex life with your wife, right? But I have this thing about like, why is it any of their business? So
Yeah.
we're navigating that.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are both like in parts like really claiming what's important to you, right?
Mhm.
And it is it is just humaning is that showing up for others and showing up for ourselves and that balance of like ego versus like autonomy. And there's no specific formula. Like we create, like we're mixing the cocktails ourselves.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
um I love this conversation. I feel like I have 8 million other questions for you. But I want to honor and respect time. And I definitely would love to like continue hearing about your journey as you explore and discover more things. Um, I like to ask everyone like a bucket list question. And I had a different question before we had this conversation. So my question has changed. You have the like full autonomy to not answer if it's not something that you don't want to share publicly. But within this like asexuality journey, what's something that you feel really excited or curious about, or even just at this point in your life, like what's something that you feel really excited or curious about exploring within your sexuality right now?
I know people used to say, Michelle, what's on your sexual bucket list? And I was like, I don't have one. I just make shit happen, right? We're connected to communities. So the minute that something would pop into my mind, I'd be like, oh, we can make that happen. Like that's what community does. I think I'm holding this for my 50th birthday because my 40th birthday, I had a really cool party that kind of took my guests through like all the parties I had thrown that year, and they kind of escalated in excitement as the night went on. So I'm kind of like holding on to this one thing for I think my 50th. I'm 48, so I've got a little bit of time here, and I could make it happen today if I wanted to, but I want to save something to be special. I've always loved the idea of a gangbang, but I also get very like concerned about safety, and I've listened to enough Dan Savage to know that I need to have a gangbang manager, and just seems like a lot. And honestly, the sex that I love the most is hand sex. So I want to have a finger bang gangbang.
This is not where I thought that was going, but
No?
I love it.
Yeah. No, I think that it's my favorite sex, and I think it would be fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
Uh, Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Um, I my my ability to fantasize just like took over for a moment.
I love it. Take it, use it for whatever you need.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation and
Can I
being
ask
here
you
with
a
us
question?
today. Yeah,
Where did
yeah.
you think it was going to go? I'm really curious.
I don't, well, I mean, my ability to fantasize always puts me into whatever people are talking about. So I start seeing and like creating the scene and like I'm like
Uh-huh.
I already had like the whole setup for you.
Okay.
But gangbang is like in my top like 5, 10 um bucket list. And so I just was like, oh, and then you were like finger gangbang. And so it just like completely shifted the the
It is not.
visualization.
I added it on FetLife as a thing. So if you
Yeah.
want to go on there, I'm sure you can find it under. I have it under my like things I am curious about. So
Yeah, no, I just loved it because it's just one, I just hadn't heard it before. And so my like my little like the pictures that were pre-existing in my mind, that wasn't there.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. I, I'll report back.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you for this conversation. Do you have anything coming up that we should be aware of? Anything you want to shout out that we can check in on?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of things that are for the public audience, though I am considering, so maybe follow along on I might meet Michelle Renee on social media.
Okay.
I'm kind of considering doing like a Q&A, a public Q&A about my work. I have a interview coming out with a client, and I think
Mhm.
it might spur some questions from people. So I'm thinking about doing like a public Q&A session around that. But otherwise, if you're a touch pro or a mental health pro working in intimacy in San Diego, you should probably get in touch because me and Uni, you could find us in a in a spot having a little social time. We just don't share it. We don't share the location publicly. We don't need all the people showing up. But
No.
if you're interested in being part of a really lovely community, we get together once a month or once every other month, and we'd love to have you join us.
Yeah, it's a beautiful space and it has really expanded a lot for me. And like not only how I'm showing up in my work, but also my curiosity of where I want my work to go. So I'm really grateful for you and the space that you hold. I'll drop all of your links in the show notes.
Yeah.
And thank you for this chat and your time and just shedding light on so many beautiful things for us. And if you have comments, questions, curiosities, drop them into the chat as well. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Uni.